The Alpha King ordered the false mate brand pressed into her skin before the entire royal pack. The iron refused her. Then it burned his wolf's true name into the floor. For one breath, no one in the Embermoon Hall moved. Not the nobles standing beneath the black wolf banners. Not the temple guards holding silver chains around the accused woman's wrists. Not the royal healers gathered with bowls of ash water to wash away the smell of a fraudulent bond. Only the brand moved. It had been glowing red-white in the brazier a moment before, shaped like a broken crescent bitten through by wolf teeth, the mark of false mates. The mark given to women who claimed a bond with an alpha they had no right to touch. Once burned into the skin, it made every wolf in the kingdom know the woman as a liar before she spoke. But when the iron neared Elara Veyne's collarbone, the fire bent away. The guard, holding it, cursed. The brand twisted in his fist, as if an unseen hand had seized the handle. Sparks leapt backward. The red-white crescent turned blue at the edges, then silver, then black as old ash. Elara closed her eyes. She waited for pain anyway. Pain had always arrived sooner or later. Rejected woman, false mate, name thief. Those were the names the court had placed around her throat before the chains. She had not claimed any of them. She had only fainted in the royal courtyard 3 nights ago when Alpha King Cassian Draven rode back from the Northern War. The moment his horse crossed the iron gate, Elara's knees gave out. A name she had never heard tore through her chest like flame-seeking air. Not Cassian, not Majesty, something older, something forbidden. She had whispered it once before darkness took her. The court had heard enough. By dawn, Lady Sorrel Frost, the chosen Luna candidate, had accused her of forging a mate call to stain the king's engagement rites. By dusk, the council ordered the false mate brand heated. Now Elara stood bound before them in a plain gray servant dress, barefoot on the black stone floor, her dark hair unbound because the guards had torn its pins away. One chain ran from her wrists to the judgment post behind her. Another circled her throat loosely enough not to choke, tight enough to remind the court she was property of accusation. Alpha King Cassian Draven stood at the foot of the throne steps, watching. He was a dangerous man to look at for too long. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, with silver-gray eyes that made silence feel like a blade. His black armor still bore scratches from war, and a mantle of winter wolf fur hung from one shoulder. Behind him, his wolf shadow should have risen strong and proud. Instead, it stood half-formed, a massive black beast with pale eyes, its body blurred at the edges like smoke around a wound. Elara had noticed that before anyone else. She had noticed too much. That was part of why they hated her now. Lady Sorrel stood beside Cassian in white ceremonial silk, her golden hair braided with moon pearls and her face arranged into beautiful sorrow. She looked as if Elara's humiliation pained her. Only Elara, chained close enough to see the tiny tension in Sorrel's fingers, knew the expression was not grief. It was waiting. "Press the brand," Sorrel said softly. "Let the court have peace." The guard tried. The iron jerked back so violently it struck the brazier. Fire spilled across the floor. The court cried out. But the flame did not spread randomly. It ran in a thin burning line from the brazier to Elara's bare feet, circled her once without touching her skin, then shot across the black stone toward the Alpha King. Cassian stepped forward. Sorrel caught his arm. "Do not." He looked down at her hand. She let go. The flame stopped halfway between Elara and Cassian. Then it began to write. Not in common letters, in old wolf script. Silver fire carved itself into the floor. Each stroke burning deeper than flame should burn into stone. The hall filled with the scent of winter smoke and blood-warmed iron. Every wolf in the room lowered its head as the letters formed. Elara could not read them, but her body knew them. The name that had torn through her chest 3 nights ago rose again behind her ribs. She bit her tongue to keep from speaking it. Cassian stared at the burning letters. For the first time since the trial began, the Alpha King looked afraid. Not of Elara, of recognition. High Elder Marov, keeper of mate law, stepped forward with shaking hands. "That cannot be." Sorelli's face paled. "It is a trick," the brand answered. The iron lifted from the brazier by itself. Every guard stepped back. Still glowing, still unheld, it turned its broken crescent face toward Sorrel first. She went still. The broken crescent on the iron matched the clasp at Sorel's throat. For one heartbeat, both marks burned the same black-silver light. Then it turned toward Cassian. The silver letters on the floor burned brighter. Cassian's wolf shadow gave a broken growl, and the blurred edges of its body sharpened for one heartbeat. Its eyes fixed on Elara with a hunger so old and wounded that she nearly stepped back despite the chains. The court saw. A murmur spread like a wound opening. Elara tried to breathe. The chain at her throat warmed. Not from iron, from the fire in the floor. Sorel moved quickly, too quickly, for a woman pretending sorrow. Majesty, the accused has name. Fireblood. That line was forbidden for a reason. It can force hidden names from noble wolves and bind kings against their will. Elara's head snapped toward her. Name fire. She had heard the phrase only once. Her grandmother had whispered it while hiding a burn-shaped birthmark beneath Elara's collar as a child. If false fire comes for you, do not beg it to be kind. Let it learn your name first. Elara had never understood. Until now, the false mate brand floated between her and Cassian, trembling like a living thing. Cassian's voice came low. What does the floor say? No one answered. Not the elders. Not the healers. Not Sorel. Elara felt the silence tighten around her like a second chain. The fire wrote one final stroke. The wolf shadow behind Cassian lifted its head. Then every wolf in the Ember Moon Hall spoke the same name through a low, involuntary growl. Vaelor. High Elder Marov staggered back. That name was removed from royal law. The sound struck Cassian like a blade. His hand went to his chest. The wolf shadow behind him became suddenly whole, huge, black, silver-eyed, and furious. Then it bowed its head. Not to the king, to Elara. The court screamed. Sorel's moon pearls cracked one by one in her hair, and the false mate brand turned toward Elara again, not to burn her, but to kneel at her feet like a defeated law. Elara looked at the kneeling iron, then at the court that had called her liar. If I am false, she said, voice shaking, why is your law kneeling? The court did not answer Elara. It could not. The kneeling iron gave the question a shape no elder could bend. The false mate brand remained at her bare feet, its broken crescent pressed to the stone like a blade forced into surrender. Around it, the old wolf script still burned in the royal floor. Vaelor. The name shimmered brighter whenever Cassian breathed. High Elder Marov kept staring at the letters as if they were a grave that had opened under his own hands. Impossible, he whispered. Removed names cannot return. Cassian turned his head slowly. Removed by whom? Marov looked up. That small hesitation changed the air. Elara felt it, even through the chains. It was not only shock in the hall now, it was fear of record. Fear of something buried under law so long that even the people who profited from it had begun to call it sacred. Sorel recovered first. She stepped forward, white silk whispering across the black stone. Majesty, the girl is dangerous. Name. Fireblood was outlawed because it does not reveal truth. It invades it. It burns through sealed names, old grief, dead bonds, anything it can use to survive judgment. Elara's throat tightened. She knew too little to deny it. That was the cruelty of Sorel's accusation. It gave a name to what Elara feared in herself and made fear look like guilt. Cassian did not look away from Marov. Was Vaelor my wolf's name? No one moved. Behind him, the great black wolf shadow stood fully formed now, but not calm. Its silver eyes remained fixed on Elara, and every time she tried to step back, the chain at her throat warmed with warning. Not pain. Recognition. Marov swallowed. A royal wolf has many war names. That is not what I asked. The hall dropped into deeper silence. Sorel's hand went to the clasp at her throat. Elara saw it. So did the kneeling iron. The black-silver light flickered once through Sorel's crescent clasp, then vanished. Sorel's fingers closed over it too quickly. Majesty, she said, softer now. If you let a forbidden blood servant stand here and pull hidden names from your wolf, the rival packs will call you bound. The northern lords will say your throne answers a false mate. Cassian finally looked at Elara. The force of his attention felt worse than accusation. He did not look at her as the court had looked at her, hungry for shame, ready to see proof of ugliness, weakness, fraud. He looked as if she had become a locked door in his own chest. "Did you know that name?" he asked. Elara's voice came thin. "No." Sorel gave a small, wounded laugh. She whispered it in the courtyard. "I whispered what came through me," Elara said. The words escaped before caution could stop them. Several nobles recoiled. "Through me." It sounded like possession, like spellwork, like guilt. But Cassian's wolf shadow stepped forward. Only one pace. The whole hall flinched. Elara saw the beast more clearly now. The black fur at its chest was not merely blurred. It had been cut through by old silver scars, shaped like bindings. Something had been sewn over its throat in shadow, a mark that pulsed every time the name Vaelor burned on the floor. Cassian saw her looking. His expression sharpened. "What do you see?" Elara should have lied. A safer woman would have lowered her eyes and said nothing. But the brand was still kneeling. Her grandmother's warning moved like smoke in her memory. "Let it learn your name first." "Your wolf's throat is sealed," Elara said. The hall erupted. "Witch. Name thief. Brand her again." Sorel lifted her chin. "You hear her!" She admits to seeing into the royal wolf. Cassian raised one hand. The court silenced. Not because he shouted, because every wolf in the hall obeyed the movement. Every wolf except Vaelor. The shadow wolf behind him remained locked on Elara, huge and trembling with contained violence. Cassian stepped closer to her. The guards holding her chains stiffened. "Back," he ordered. They hesitated. Vaelor growled. The guards dropped the chains as if burned. Elara staggered when the tension fell from her wrists. The iron cuffs were still locked, but for the first time since the trial began, no man held the other end. Cassian stopped close enough for her to smell winter steel, smoke, and blood beneath his armor. Not desire, not softness. "Danger. Tell me again," he said. "What is on my wolf's throat?" Elara looked past his shoulder. Vaelor's eyes met hers. Pain struck through her own neck so sharply she gasped. For an instant, she saw a flash of memory, a black wolf held down beneath 7 iron moons, a young Cassian screaming from behind a temple door, Sorel's crescent clasp resting in an older woman's palm, and a name burned out of royal law, while the wolf was forced to swallow silence. The vision vanished. Elara swayed. Cassian caught her by the arm. The court inhaled as one. His hand closed around her sleeve, not skin, but the heat beneath his fingers still made the chain at her throat glow faintly blue. Vaelor lowered his massive head, watching the touch as if it mattered more than any law in the hall. Sorella saw it too. Her beautiful sorrow cracked into something cold. Elara pulled her arm back. "Do not." Cassian released her immediately. The surprise in his eyes was brief, but real. She had refused comfort from a king, not because she did not need it, because she would not let the court turn his touch into another accusation. Cassian understood. That unsettled him more than gratitude would have. Before he could speak, High Elder Marov lifted his staff. "The law is clear. A name, fire bloodline, cannot be judged by common iron. She must be taken to the ash vault, where forbidden mate claims are purified before witnesses." Sorella's face smoothed. Too fast. Elara saw the relief. So did the kneeling brand. Its broken crescent scraped once against the stone. Cassian turned toward Marov. "Purified how?" Marov lowered his gaze. "By royal flame." The hall went colder than winter. Elara had heard of the ash vault only in servant whispers. Beneath the throne, beneath the old wolf crypts, beneath even the moon wells, there was a chamber where false bonds were burned out of blood. Women had entered it, accused of mate fraud. None had returned speaking. Cassian's jaw tightened. "No." The word struck the hall like a command. But Sorel was ready. "If you refuse purification," she said gently, "the council must assume the bond has influenced you." Cassian looked at her. For the first time, his suspicion had direction. Serele did not blink. Elara understood then. This was never only about branding her. The brand had failed, but Sorel had a deeper path prepared. If Cassian protected Elara, he would look enchanted. If he surrendered her, the ash vault would silence whatever Vaelor had begun to remember. Either way, Sorel won. Unless the name burned again. Elara looked down at the floor. The silver letters were fading. Vaelor. The last stroke dimmed first. Panic moved through her before she could name it. Elara pressed her bound hands toward the fading name. "No," she said, louder this time. "If your law devoured him, then let it choke." Cassian heard. The wolf shadow heard, and the kneeling iron at her feet suddenly rose. It flew past Elara, past Cassian, past the elders, and struck the sealed doors behind the throne. The doors cracked open. A breath of buried heat rolled into the hall. From below came the scent of old ash, iron, and wolves that had forgotten how to howl. Marov went white. Sorel stepped back, not like someone seeing a forbidden chamber, like someone seeing a locked room open too soon. Cassian looked into the darkness beyond the throne doors. Then Vaelor spoke, not in a growl now, but in a broken voice every wolf-blooded soul in the hall could hear. "Name, fire returns what law devoured." Cassian looked into the dark below the throne. "Then we go where the law fed." The throne steps groaned as the hidden passage opened beneath them. Black stone folded inward one slab at a time, revealing a stairway cut so deep into the mountain that the torchlight could not reach its end. Heat rose from below in slow breaths. Not clean fire, not hearth fire, ash fire, old and bitter, carrying the scent of burned iron, sealed blood, and wolves that had been forced into silence. Elara stood chained beside the judgment post, staring into the dark. The false mate brand hovered in the air between her and the opened passage, its broken crescent glowing like an eye that had finally turned toward its maker. No one moved first, not even Cassian. The Alpha King stood at the mouth of the stair, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, Vaelor's shadow huge behind him. The wolf's throat still bore those silver scars, but now they pulsed with the fading rhythm of the name burned into the floor. Vaelor, a name removed from royal law. A name every wolf had known once it was forced to remember. High Elder Marov's staff trembled against the stone. "Majesty, the ash vault is not entered by royal command. It opens only for purification rites and sealed council witness." Cassian did not look at him. It opened for her. The words struck Elara with more force than kindness would have. Not because he defended her, because he named what everyone wanted to avoid. The law had tried to burn her, the iron had refused, the floor had spoken, the sealed doors had opened. And yet, in every face around her, Elara saw the same question. How can we still make her guilty? Sorel stepped closer to Cassian, careful not to cross the line of silver ash spreading from the stairway. "If you enter with her, they will say the name. Fire has you by the throat." What Cassian finally turned. "They already say many things." Her expression softened. "I am trying to protect your crown." Vaelor growled. The sound was low, but it made Sorel's moon pearls tremble against her hair. Elara watched Sorel's hand drift again to the crescent clasp at her throat. The same shape as the brand, the same black-silver flare when the iron had turned toward her. Sorel knew the ash vault, not as legend, as instrument. Cassian looked to the guards. "Release her wrists." The hall shook with protest. Marov stepped forward. "Majesty, release them." The guard nearest Elara fumbled with the key. His hands shook so badly the iron scraped her skin before the cuffs opened. Her wrists came free, red and swollen, ringed with bruises where the chains had bitten. The throat chain remained, locked by council seal. Cassian saw it. His eyes darkened. "Remove that as well." Marov's voice sharpened. "The throat chain prevents forbidden mate speech." Elara touched the cold metal at her neck. Until that moment, she had not realized how shallowly she had been breathing. Cassian took one step toward her. The chain flared blue. Vaelor snarlil. The false mate brand swung in the air, pointing its broken crescent at Marov like an accusation. Marov swallowed. Only the ash vault can remove it now. Sorel's relief was almost invisible. Almost. Elara noticed. Cassian did too. He looked at Elara. "Can you walk?" It was not a soft question. It was worse. It assumed she could answer for herself. Elara straightened, though her knees still felt hollow. "Yes." Sorel's mouth tightened at the single word. Cassian stepped aside, opening the path but not touching her. "Then, walk beside me, not behind me." The court reacted as if he had placed a crown on her head. Elara hesitated. Beside him meant claim. Behind him meant prisoner. Before him meant offering. There was no safe position in a room built by wolves, so she chose the one that made Sorel angriest. She walked beside the Alpha King. The false mate brand floated ahead of them like a reluctant guide. Vaelor followed behind Cassian, black paws silent on stone, silver eyes never leaving Elara's throat chain. At the first stair, Elara felt the heat rise under her bare feet. The ash fire below recognized the chain and tightened it. She stopped. Cassian stopped with her. The entire court held its breath above them. From below came a whisper. Not a voice. A law remembering hunger. False mates burn clean. Elara's stomach turned. The brand flared. A second whisper answered through its iron. False law burns first. The stairway lit. One by one, black steps glowed with old symbols. Names had been burned into them and scraped away so many times the stone had become scarred like skin. Elara saw women's handprints along the walls, some small, some clawed, some dragged downward. Not all of them belonged to women who had lied. Some had been afraid. Some had fought. Some had known names the court did not want returned. Cassian saw them too. His face became still in the most dangerous way. "How many?" he asked Marov. The elder did not follow them down, but his answer floated from above. "The Ash Vault has served royal law for 7 generations. That is not an answer." No one spoke. Elara descended another step. The throat chain warmed, then burned. She bit back a gasp. Vaelor surged forward. Cassian lifted a hand, stopping the wolf without turning, but his own jaw clenched as if he had felt the burn too. Sorel remained at the top of the stairs, framed by court light. "Majesty, please, let the priests take her down. If she is innocent, the vault will release her." Elara looked back. The lie was elegant. If she died, the vault had judged. If she lived broken, the vault had purified. If she spoke truth, the chain would call it forbidden. Elara turned toward the dark again. "I will not be carried into another law's mouth," she said. Cassian's eyes moved to her. Something flickered there. Not love. Not yet. Respect, sharp and unwilling. They reached the base of the stairs. The ash vault opened before them in a vast circular chamber beneath the throne. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness. 7 iron moons hung over a pit of white ash. Around the walls stood branding irons, throat chains, sealed names in glass, and black stone tablets carved with mate judgments. At the center of the chamber was a wolf-shaped furnace. Its mouth was open. Inside it, flames burned without wood. The false mate brand flew to the furnace and struck its iron face. The furnace woke. Ash scattered across the floor, forming letters. Elara stepped closer despite the pain in her throat. Cassian read aloud, voice low. Vaelor Draven, Royal Wolf, name removed under emergency mate, law, witnessed by High Elder Marov, Lady Sorel Frost, and the Moon Temple Blood Council. Marov did not deny it. That was worse. Above them, Sorel's breath caught. Elara looked up through the open stairwell. Cassian did not. His eyes remained on the ash-written record. "You witnessed it," he said. Sorel's voice came from above, controlled but thinner now. "I was a child." The ash moved again. More words formed. Luna candidate Sorel Frost received provisional claim right after royal wolf name removal. Elara felt the truth settle into place with terrible clarity. Sorel had not simply accused her to protect an engagement. Sorel's path to Cassian had been built on Vaelor's silence. The throat chain around Elara's neck tightened until she could barely breathe. The furnace spoke in a voice of iron and ash. "False mate present. Purification may begin." Elara waited for the fire to climb her body. Instead, the ash curled around her feet and flowed past her, up the stairs. The furnace did not face Elara. Its iron jaws turned toward the stairway, where Sorel stood in white silk. The 7 iron moons dropped lower. Cassian drew his sword. Vaelor stepped in front of Elara. Elara looked at the ash-written record. "If the vault wants a false mate," she said, "it has already named one." And the ash beneath Sorel's feet burst into blue fire. Sorel did not scream when the blue fire caught her hem. That was the first thing Elara noticed. A woman surprised by judgment would have recoiled. A woman falsely accused would have stumbled backward from the ash curling around her feet. Sorel only looked down. Her face went still in a way that chilled Elara more than fear would have. The blue fire climbed the white silk without burning it. It traced the embroidery at Sorel's ankles, then ran upward in thin lines toward the crescent clasp at her throat. The clasp answered with black silver light. The false mate brand trembled before the furnace. Vaelor snalu. Cassian stood at the center of the ash vault, sword drawn, the glow of blue fire cutting across his face. He looked up the stairwell at Sorel as if seeing not his chosen Luna, but the shape of a lock he had worn too long to notice. "Step down," he said. Sorel lifted her chin. "If I enter the vault under accusation, the council must witness." High Elder Marov found his voice too quickly. "Correct. The Ash Vault cannot judge a Luna candidate without full council presence." Cassian's eyes cut to him. "You were named in the record." Marov's mouth shut. The silence from the elder was no longer cautious. It was cornered. Elara touched the throat chain. The metal still burned, but the heat had changed. Before, it had punished her breath. Now it pulsed, every time Sorel's clasp glowed, as if both pieces had been forged to answer the same lie. She looked at the clasp. The broken crescent. The same bite-marked shape as the false mate brand. "Her clasp," Elara said. Every face turned toward her. She swallowed against the chain. "It is not jewelry." Sorel smiled faintly. "A servant girl has become an expert in royal ornaments?" "No," Elara said. But the brand recognized it. The blue fire flared. The ash beneath Sorel's feet formed a ring. Not around her body. Around the clasp's shadow. Cassian saw it. "Remove it." Sorel's hand closed over the crescent. "You gave this to me." The words struck him. Elara saw the wound open behind his eyes. Not love, perhaps. Not anymore. But memory. Trust, once offered. A political promise made before witnesses. Years of a court telling him Sorel was the safe choice, the lawful match, the woman who could steady a cursed throne. Cassian's voice lowered. "Then I revoke it." The clasp did not open. Instead, the throat chain around Elara's neck snapped tight. She gasped. Vaelor lunged toward her, but Cassian's hand shot out, stopping the wolf shadow before it crossed the ash circle. The 7 iron moons above the vault lowered another inch. Sorel's smile faded into something sharper. "Careful, Majesty. Provisional claim. Right was sealed through your royal wolf. If you tear it from me by force, the bond recoil will strike the nearest name-fire vessel." Elara understood only half the words. Her body understood the rest. If Cassian broke Sorel's claim, Elara would burn. The vault had named the false mate, but the false mate had tied herself to the true witness. A clever K. Cassian looked at Elara. "Did you know?" The question was not accusation. It was horror. She shook her head, breath shallow. "I did not even know what I was." Sorel stepped down one stair. The blue fire followed her. "Of course she did not," Sorel said. "Name. Fire girls are rarely taught. Their blood remembers even when their minds remain useful." Elara's stomach turned. Useful. That was the word beneath every law here. Cassian's sword shifted in his hand. "You speak as if you studied them." Sorel's eyes flashed. "Someone had to. Your father left a kingdom that would fracture if your wolf ever chose against council design." Vaelor gave a sound so deep, the furnace flames bent toward him. The ash record stirred again. Words rose across the floor. Provisional claim right anchored through removed wolf name. Emergency mate law maintained by crescent seal. Elara stared at the crescent clasp. Not jewelry. A seal. A false bridge between Sorel and the king's silenced wolf. No wonder Sorel had feared the name. If Vaelor returned fully, her claim would collapse. Marov gripped his staff. The crescent seal was authorized to prevent royal instability. Cassian did not look away from Sorel. "You mean to prevent my wolf from choosing?" "The throne could not wait on instinct," Marov said. Vaelor's shadow rose higher behind Cassian, black fur bristling, silver scars blazing at the throat. Elara felt the name fire inside her answer. Not power like a weapon. Pain, like memory becoming flame. She stepped forward. Cassian's head snapped toward her. "Do not!" The command struck too hard. Elara froze. The vault went quiet. Cassian heard it too, the shape of his own voice, too close to the men who had ordered her branded. Regret crossed his face at once. Elara lifted her chin despite the chain. If your law used my bloodline as a vessel, then standing still will not save me. Sorel laughed softly. Brave. Pointless, but brave. Elara ignored her and looked at the false mate brand kneeling before the furnace. You refused my skin because the judgment was false. The brand glowed. You wrote his wolf name because the law hid it. The old iron trembled harder. Then show us what the crescent seal holds. Sorel moved. Too fast. She tore the clasp from her own throat. For one heartbeat, Elara thought Sorel meant to destroy it. Instead, Sorel flung it down into the ash vault. The broken crescent struck the floor between Cassian and Elara. The impact split the ash. A black-silver flame erupted upward, forming the shape of a woman's hand around Vaelor's throat. Not Sorel's hand. Older, ringed, crowned. Cassian went rigid. The flame formed a face. A queen's face, severe and beautiful, with Cassian's silver-gray eyes. Elara heard him breathe once. Mother. The word was not soft. It was a wound reopened. Sorel descended another step. Blue fire swirling around her white silk like a bridal veil turned judgment flame. Your mother sealed him first, she said. I only inherited the duty. The queen-shaped flame tightened its hand around Vaelor's throat. Cassian staggered. Elara felt the throat chain burn white-hot. Vaelor choked, and from the furnace, the ash record wrote one final line across the floor. Name fire witness required to break royal mother seal. Sorel smiled down at Elara. Go on then, she whispered. Save his wolf, and let his mother's curse eat you instead. Elara stepped toward the queen-shaped fire before fear could teach her obedience. Cassian reached for her and stopped himself. That restraint mattered more than a rescue. The ash vault watched them both. The 7 iron moons hung low above the pit, their edges glowing red through the old ash. The wolf-shaped furnace breathed behind Elara like a beast waiting to see what kind of woman would enter its mouth. Around the chamber, the old throat chains trembled on their hooks, stirred by the sound of Vaelor choking. The queen-shaped flame tightened its burning hand around the wolf shadow's throat. Cassian staggered once, sword point scraping the stone. Vaelor fought without sound now. That was worse than a howl. His massive black body shook under the silver scars, and the name burned into the floor. Vaelor began to blur at the edges. Sorel stood halfway down the stair, blue fire curling around her white silk. A true mate would not hesitate. Elara looked at her. That is why you chose this place, she said. You wanted the vault to make cruelty look like proof. Sorella's smile thinned. Elara turned back to the mother seal. The queen's face hovered above the ash, stern and beautiful, eyes full of Cassian's winter gray. But the longer Elara looked, the less the expression seemed like hatred. It looked like pain frozen into command. Name fire witness required. The words still burned across the floor. Elara lifted her bound hands. The iron cuffs had been unlocked, but the throat chain remained. It pulsed now with the same rhythm as the queen's flaming hand. Marav's voice floated down from above, brittle with panic. Do not let her touch the seal. Name, fire blood corrupts royal memory. Or restores it, Cassian said, through clenched teeth. Elara glanced at him. His face was pale, but he was still standing, still refusing to order her, still holding back the one command that would make this easier for him and ruin everything between them before it could begin. Tell me to stop, she said quietly. His eyes locked on hers. For one dangerous heartbeat, she saw the war inside him. The king needed certainty. The wolf needed breath. The man, wounded by law and mother and court, wanted to pull her away from the fire even if it cost him answers. But he only said, choose with your own blood. Elara almost broke then. Not because it was gentle, because no one in the hall had ever given her that much ownership over her pain. She faced the queen seal and pressed both hands into the ash. Blue fire surged up her arms. The throat chain tightened until black spots bloomed at the edges of her sight. Vaelor's pain slammed into her iron moons, temple smoke, a boy's scream behind a closed door, a mother's hand over his mouth not to silence him, but to keep him from speaking a name that would call death into the room. Elara gasped. The vision sharpened. Queen Mareth Draven knelt in this same vault years ago, one hand bloodied, one hand locked around young Vaelor's throat. Cassian was only a boy then, held back by guards, face wet with fury. In front of the queen stood 3 Moon Temple priests and High Elder Marov, younger but already cold-eyed. Between them lay a prophecy tablet cracked down the middle, the words burned in Elara's mind. When the royal wolf speaks his true name to the Namefire bride, the throne will either be remade or devoured. Marov had read the second half louder. Devoured. The queen had looked at her son, then at the temple blades pointed toward him. If I refuse? She had asked. Marov's younger voice answered. Then the council declares the prince unfit, kills the wolf, and places the frost line beside the throne. The memory twisted. Sorel was there, a child in white, standing beside an older frost woman whose crescent clasp matched the broken brand. The child Sorel did not understand everything, but she watched. She learned where power hid. Queen Marith turned to Vaelor. I will not let them kill you, she whispered. Then she sealed his true name. Not to destroy him, to keep him alive. Elara tore her hands from the ash with a cry. The queen-shaped flame did not vanish, but its hand loosened around Vaelor's throat. Cassian stared at her. What did you see? Elara could barely breathe. Your mother did seal him. The pain in his face went silent. But not for Sorel, Elara said. Not at first. The council forced her. Marov threatened to kill Vaelor and remove you from succession if she refused. Above them, Marov struck his staff against the floor. Lies. The ash vault answered before Elara could. The prophecy tablet rose from the pit of white ash. Broken. Blackened. Still readable. Cassian looked at Marov. The elder's face had gone the color of bone. Sorel's expression changed. Just slightly. Enough. She had not known that part. Elara saw it and understood the fracture. Sorel had inherited the seal and learned to use it, but the first wound was older than her ambition. The frost line had taken advantage of a mother's terror and turned survival into a leash. Cassian stepped toward the prophecy tablet. Vaelor's shadow staggered after him, breathing again, but the queen flame still held one burning hand near his throat. Cassian read the words. When the royal wolf speaks his true name to the Namefire bride, the throne will either be remade or devoured. His gaze moved to Elara at the last 2 words. Namefire bride. The chamber seemed to inhale. Elara stepped back. No, she whispered. Sorel laughed from the stairs, sharp with regained control. There it is, not a servant, not a victim, a prophecy bride. How convenient. The court above murmured in fear. Elara felt it turning again. The old pattern. If she was weak, they branded her false. If she was named, they called her dangerous. If she mattered, they called her a threat. Cassian looked up at the court, then back at Elara. His voice was rough. Did you know? No. She hated how small the answer sounded. But Vaelor stepped beside her. Still scarred, still wounded, yet breathing. The black wolf lowered his head and pressed his muzzle near her shoulder, not touching, but close enough that the throat chain around her neck cracked once. Cassian saw it. So did Sorel. Her hand tightened at her side. The blue fire around her hem turned black at the edges. Elara placed one hand over the cracked throat chain. The Namefire inside her had not made her invincible. It had only made her unable to survive a lie quietly. She looked at the prophecy tablet again. It says the throne may be remade. Marov's voice shook with anger. Or devoured. Then perhaps, Elara said, you should have built a throne that was not so easy to eat. Vaelor gave one low, approving growl. Cassian's eyes flashed toward her, something fierce and unwilling moving beneath his restraint. Sorel descended the final stairs into the ash vault. The blue fire did not stop her now. It folded around her like a veil. She lifted her bare hand, and the broken crescent clasp rose from the floor, returning to her palm. You think the queen's fear makes you innocent? Sorel asked. It only proves the throne has always known what you are. She pressed the crescent against her chest. The black-silver flame spread across her white silk-like armor. The name, Firebride remakes or devours, she said. So let the court see which one you are. The 7 iron moons above the vault turned toward Elara. The false mate brand rose from the furnace. Cassian stepped in front of her with Vaelor at his side. But this time, the vault did not aim at Elara's skin. It aimed at her heart. And the prophecy tablet split open, revealing a second line hidden beneath the first. Only the true wolf name may choose which fate she becomes. The hidden line did not stay on the tablet. It lifted from the broken stone in threads of blue fire and wrapped itself around the 7 iron moons above the vault. Each moon turned with a grinding sound, their faces no longer aimed at Elara alone, but at Vaelor. Only the true wolf name may choose which fate she becomes. The chamber understood, before the court did. The ash vault was not asking whether Elara was dangerous. It was asking Vaelor what she was. Remaking, or devouring. Cassian stood before her with his sword drawn, but Elara knew a blade could not answer this. Neither could a crown. Neither could a council elder shaking above them in the hall, or a Luna candidate dressed in white silk and black silver flame. Sorel stepped into the center of the vault. The crescent seal burned against her chest, no longer pretending to be an ornament. Its broken shape pulsed in time with the scars around Vaelor's throat. "Then let the true name choose," Sorel said. Cassian's eyes narrowed. "You are still holding part of his seal. I am holding what your mother gave my line to keep the throne alive, to keep me obedient." Sorel's face hardened. "To keep your wolf from choosing a woman who would burn your kingdom hollow." Elara flinched despite herself, not because she believed Sorel, because some part of her feared the prophecy had been waiting all her life to become an accusation. The 7 iron moons lowered. Heat pressed against Elara's chest, not her skin, deeper, as if the vault were searching for the place where her blood became fire. The throat chain tightened once more. Vaelor lunged. This time Cassian did not stop him. The black wolf shadow crossed in front of Elara and planted himself between her heart and the iron moons. The flame struck his scarred throat instead. He snarled, but did not move. Cassian staggered, as if the fire had passed through his own bones. Elara reached toward him before she could stop herself. He looked at her hand, then at her face. "Do not," he said. The word cut. Then he added, rougher. "Not because I command you, because it will burn you." The hurt inside her loosened by one breath. Sorel saw that too. Her eyes flashed with hatred too old to be only jealousy. How touching. The king learns courtesy while his wolf chooses doom. She lifted the crescent seal. Black silver fire shot from it and wrapped around Vaelor's throat. The scarred bindings that had begun to loosen snapped tight again. Vaelor's body arched. Cassian dropped to one knee, one hand pressed to his own throat. Elara's chain burned with them. 3 throats. One lie. She understood it in a single flash. The crescent seal had not merely silenced Vaelor, it had built a false triangle. Sorel's claim, Cassian's obedience, and any name, fire witness used as punishment if the seal was challenged. That was why Elara's chain answered the clasp. She was not collateral by accident. She had been prepared as the cost. Marov had known. The frost line had known. Sorel had counted on it. Elara turned toward the stairwell. "This chain was made for my bloodline." Above them, Marov said nothing. Again, that was enough. Cassian rose slowly, fury making him almost calm. "How many fire girls did your law prepare before her?" Marov's silence deepened. Ash drifted from the furnace floor and formed faint handprints along the walls women dragged into the vault, throats chained, hearts burned so sealed royal names would stay sealed. Elara looked at them. She had thought herself singular in suffering. She was not. That made the pain larger. It also made it less lonely. Sorel tightened her grip on the crescent seal. Every kingdom survives by choosing what must be sacrificed. Elara faced her. "You mean who?" The false mate brand rose from beside the furnace and hovered near Elara's shoulder, no longer kneeling, not attacking, waiting. Elara looked at it. "You burned liars," she whispered, "but you learned the shape of every lie." The brand glowed. Sorel laughed. "Are you speaking to iron now?" "No," Elara said. "To witness." The brand turned. Its broken crescent faced the throat chain around Elara's neck. Cassian saw it at the same moment she did. "Elara," she lifted her chin. "If the seal uses my chain to punish the truth, then the chain must answer judgment too. That may kill you. It is killing him." Vaelor's silver eyes shifted toward her through pain. Not asking, begging her not to. That nearly undid her. A monster would have taken the sacrifice. Vaelor refused it. "The true wolf name may choose." Elara stepped around him. The iron moons flared. Cassian moved, then stopped himself with visible effort. His hand shook around the sword hilt. Sorel smiled. There she is, the devouring bride, always reaching for fire. Elara touched the throat chain. Pain burst white behind her eyes. But beneath it, she found a seam. Not metal. Law. A strip of old words burned into the chain's inner side. Name fire vessel to receive recoil if royal wolf name rejects provisional claim. She read it aloud. The court above erupted. Cassian looked at Sorel. Sorel's smile vanished. The ash vault heard the words. So did the false mate brand. The brand struck the chain. Blue fire exploded around Elara's throat. She fell to her knees, unable to breathe, while Vaelor roared so loudly the iron moons shook. Cassian caught her before her head struck the stone, one arm around her shoulders, his sword clattering to the floor. His touch should have made the court shout enchantment. No one did. The chain cracked. Once. Twice. Then Sorel screamed and pressed the crescent seal to her own heart. The broken clasp drank the recoil meant for Elara and turned it outward. Not toward Vaelor. Toward Cassian. The seal's black-silver fire pierced the space between king and wolf. Vaelor convulsed, suddenly dragged halfway back into shadow. Cassian's eyes went glass-bright with pain. Sorel's voice rose over the chaos. If he chooses her, he loses the wolf. If he keeps the wolf, he must condemn her. The vault went silent. There was the real trap. Not prophecy. Choice. Elara struggled to rise, but Cassian held her carefully, not restraining, only keeping her from falling into the ash. He looked at Vaelor, then at Sorel, then at Elara. His voice came low, stripped of throne, court, and command. I will not keep a wolf by murdering the name he loves. The ash vault trembled. Sorel's face changed. Fear at last. Cassian turned to Vaelor and lowered his head, not in defeat, but in release. Choose, he said. Vaelor's scarred throat split open with silver light. The name on the floor burned brighter than the sun. Then the black wolf shadow stepped through Cassian, out of him, and toward Elara. Every iron moon cracked, and for the first time, Vaelor spoke her name. The sound of Elara's name did not enter the ash vault like speech. It entered like fire finding breath. Every chain on the walls rang once. Every branding iron turned cold. The 7 cracked moons above the pit bled silver light down through the ash, and the name Vaelor had spoken moved through the chamber until even the stones seemed to remember it. Elara, not servant, not false mate, not vessel, Name. The throat chain around her neck shattered. She fell forward, coughing air into her lungs as broken iron struck the floor around her knees. Cassian caught her by the shoulders before she collapsed fully, then released her the instant she could hold herself. Careful, controlled. As if he had finally understood that saving her did not mean taking command of her. Vaelor stood before her, no longer trapped behind Cassian, no longer blurred at the edges. The great black wolf shadow was almost solid now, silver scars still burning at his throat, but split open by the light of the true name he had chosen to speak. Above them, the court stared down through the open stairwell in horror. A royal wolf had stepped out of its king and chosen the accused woman first. Sorel seized the moment like a blade. You all see it. The prophecy is unfolding. The Namefire bride has drawn the royal wolf out of his body. She is devouring the throne. Murmurs rippled through the hall above. Fear was faster than truth. Cassian's face had gone pale. Without Vaelor fully anchored inside him, his strength bled visibly into the ash. One knee touched the stone before he forced himself upright again. Elara saw it and turned toward Vaelor. Go back to him. Vaelor did not move. Her heart struck painfully against her ribs. I said go back. The wolf's silver eyes held hers. Not disobedient. Waiting. Cassian's voice came rough behind her. He will not obey you as command. Elara looked back. Pain had hollowed his face, but there was no accusation in it. Only understanding bought at a terrible cost. He chose your name, Cassian said. Now you must choose what kind of bond receives him. Sorel laughed. Listen to him. He already calls it bond. The word cut through the vault. Bund. The court leaned toward it hungrily, ready to twist it into spellwork, seduction, treason. Elara looked at Vaelor. then at Cassian. The old pattern waited for her. Take power quickly before it was taken from her. Hold the wolf who had protected her. Let the court fear what it had tried to burn. But Vaelor was not a prize. Cassian was not a throne to seize. And she would not escape one cage by becoming another. Elara lifted one trembling hand, not touching Vaelor, only offering space between them. If you returned because I called truth, then return to him by truth, not by seal, not by command, not by fear. Vaelor lowered his head. The silver scars at his throat cracked wider. Cassian drew in a sharp breath as if the same wounds had opened inside him. Still, he did not call the wolf back. He did not order. He did not plead before the court. He only said, "Come back if you are free." The ash vault went silent. Vaelor turned. One step toward Cassian, then another. When the wolf shadow reached him, he did not vanish into the king as before. He pressed his scarred throat against Cassian's chest, and black-silver fire moved between them like a wound being stitched without hiding the scar. Cassian staggered, but remained standing. The chamber exhaled. Vaelor was inside him again, but not chained. Elara felt the difference. The air had changed around Cassian. His power no longer pressed outward like a locked door. It breathed. Dangerous still, but living. The ash on the floor began to write. True wolf name, chose return. Namefire witness did not devour. The words burned brighter. Fate chosen, remaking. The court above recoiled. Sorel's expression twisted. The vault was no longer merely defending Elara. It was contradicting the prophecies Sorel had weaponized. The false mate brand rose from beside the furnace and turned its broken crescent toward the stairway. Blue fire rushed up the steps, circling Sorel's feet again. This time it did not hesitate at her silk. It climbed to the crescent seal pressed against her chest and burned through the black-silver flame she wore like armor. Seralle hisset. The ash record wrote a new line across the vault floor. Provisional, claim right void. Another line followed. False mate named Sorel Frost. The hall above exploded. Nobles shouted. Frost guards drew steel. Marov struck his staff against the black stone, calling for order, but his voice cracked under the weight of the vault's words. Sorel stood very still. Then she smiled. Not beautifully now. Barely human. You think I wanted a false claim? She asked. The blue fire gnawed at the crescent seal, but she held it against her chest with both hands. Blood slipped between her fingers where the metal burned into her skin. I wanted a living kingdom. Cassian's eyes hardened. Built on my wolf's silence. Built on survival. Sorel's voice sharpened, echoing down into the vault. Your mother understood. Marov understood. The Frost line understood what no Draven king ever accepts. Wolves choose ruin when hearts are allowed near thrones. Elara rose slowly, one hand at her freed throat. Then why accuse me of being false? Sorel looked at her. Because if the court believed you were true, they would follow you into fire before they admitted they had lived under ash. The words landed too close to the truth. Elara saw the court above the fear, the shame, the anger, searching for somewhere safer than itself. Sorella saw it too, and used it. She tore the crescent seal from her chest. This time, flesh came with it. Cassian moved, but too late. Sorel flung the blood-burning seal into the open stairwell. It struck Marov's staff at the top of the vault, and the elder finally stopped pretending he was only witness. He caught it. The staff split down the center, revealing a hollow core filled with black ash and silver hair. Queen Marith's hair. Cassian went utterly still. Sorel's voice dropped into triumph. Your mother did not only seal Vaelor, Majesty. She left a second command in case the wolf ever chose against the throne. Marov lifted the open staff. The queen's hair burned. Vaelor snarled inside Cassian's shadow, but the sound broke halfway. The ash vault darkened. Across the chamber floor, one final hidden law wrote itself in black flame. If the royal wolf name chooses the Namefire bride, the bride must be crowned in ash or burned as the devourer. The 7 cracked iron moons turned downward again. Not toward Elara's skin, toward her head. Sorel looked at Cassian, then at Elara. Remake the throne, then, she whispered. Let us see whether he dares crown the fire that can destroy him. The iron moons lowered, until their cracked faces hung above Elara like a crown waiting to become a sentence. Ash rose from the pit in a slow spiral. Not gray ash. White. Bone white. It circled her head without touching, then sharpened into the shape of a crown made from burned wolf script. Every point carried a name, scraped nearly unreadable, as if other women had worn this judgment before her and left pieces of themselves inside it. The court above fell into a silence, too hungry to be prayer. Crowned in ash, or burned as devourer. Elara understood the cruelty at once. The vault had offered only two shapes for a woman the throne feared, symbol or monster. If Cassian crowned her, the court could say name. Fire had conquered the king. If he refused, the vault would burn her and call the murder protection. Sorel stood at the stairwell, one hand pressed over the wound where the crescent seal had torn her skin. She looked pale now, but not defeated. The hidden law had given her back what truth had taken, a path to control the ending. "Go on, Majesty," she said softly. "Crown her. Show every rival pack that the Draven throne kneels to a forbidden bride." Cassian's face was carved from cold fury. "I will not crown a woman with a blade over her throat." Marov lifted the open staff. Queen Marith's silver hair burned inside it, feeding the black flame of the second command. "The law does not ask your comfort." Vaelor snarled within Cassian's shadow. This time the sound shook dust from the ceiling. Elara looked at the ash crown circling above her. Her heart hammered so hard she felt it in her burned wrists, her freed throat, the hidden place in her blood where Namefire had woken not as victory, but as inheritance. She did not want the crown. She did not want to be devourer. She did not want a kingdom that had chained her to decide which shape of fear she was allowed to survive. Cassian took one step toward her. The iron moons flared in warning. Elara lifted a hand before he could come closer. He stopped. The restraint was visible in him, painful, almost violent, but he stopped. That gave her room to choose. Elara turned toward the furnace. The wolf-shaped iron beast watched with its open mouth full of blue flame. The false mate brand hovered beside it, trembling as if it knew the vault had reached the oldest lie and feared what would happen if that lie burned clean. "If this crown is judgment," Elara said, voice rough from the broken chain, "then let it speak its whole record." Marov struck his staff against the stone. "The right has no such requirement." Elara looked up at him. "Your rights keep losing to witness." The brand flared. A ripple moved through the ash crown. One of the nearly erased names brightened. Then another. Then another. Women's names appeared along the crown's points, each written in pale fire. Miraine, Sorith, Alan Vale, Thessa of the Red Fen, Elara Moonbent, Kyla Draven. Cassian went still at the last name. "Kayla," he whispered. Sorel's expression sharpened. She had not expected that name either. Elara looked at him. Who was she? Cassian's eyes did not leave the crown. "My father's first mate." The vault darkened. The ash crown spun faster. More words burned beneath Kyla's name. True mate rejected under council instability law. Named devourer, burned before succession. The chamber seemed to fall away beneath them. Elara saw it in a flash of blue fire, a woman with dark hair standing in this same vault, not begging, not screaming, one hand over her heart while the ash crown hovered above her. A younger Queen Marith stood outside the circle, not yet queen, watching with terror as the council declared Kyla's bond dangerous. Marov, younger still, held the same staff. The frost line stood near the door. The pattern was older than Cassian, older than Sorelle. A throne preserved by burning the women its wolves chose. Cassian's sword point lowered toward the floor. Not in defeat, in horror. "My father's wolf chose her," he said. Marov's face tightened, and the kingdom nearly fractured. "No," Elara said, the name, fire rising hot behind her ribs. The council fractured it, then blamed the woman who would not fit inside their law. The ash crown stopped spinning. For one breath, every erased name faced outward. The court above read them. The ash vault had not crowned false mates. It had buried true ones. Sorel saw the shift and moved quickly. "Even if that is true, it proves my point. Every forbidden bride brought crisis. Every name, fire witness, brings the throne to ruin." Elara looked up at her. "No. You call it ruin when a wolf chooses without permission." The false mate brand struck the floor once. The ash crown descended. Cassian moved despite himself, but Vaelor blocked him, not to protect the law, to protect Elara's choice. The great wolf shadow looked at her with silver eyes and lowered his head. Elara understood. The true wolf name had chosen what she could become. Now she had to choose whether to fear it. She stepped beneath the crown before it could fall on her. The court gasped. Cassian's voice broke around her name. Elara. She looked at him. If it burns me, she said, then let it burn a woman who stood. The crown touched her hair. Blue fire swallowed her. Cassian lunged, but Vaelor held him back, with a roar that shook the vault. The flames wrapped Elara's body, her dress, her hands, her throat, but they did not consume her skin. They burned through the air around her, through old accusations, through false records clinging to her name. The ash crown cracked, not because she was devourer, because it could not find a lie to feed on. One by one, the names on the crown lifted free and filled the chamber like released sparks. The hidden law split open. New words burned across the floor. Namefire does not devour the throne. It devours false law. Marov stumbled backward. Sorel's eyes widened. Cassian stared at Elara as the blue flame faded, leaving her standing barefoot in the ash, hair loosened around her shoulders, a thin silver mark glowing at her brow where the crown had broken. Not queen. Not monster. Witness. Then the furnace opened its iron mouth wider, and from its blue heart came the voice of Cassian's dead mother. Forgive me, my son. I sealed one true name to keep you alive, but the council made an empire from my fear. The blue flame inside the furnace took the shape of a woman. Not whole, not alive. A memory made from ash, guilt, and royal blood. Queen Mareth Draven stood inside the wolf-shaped furnace, with fire moving through her crown and sorrow carved into the lines of her face. She looked younger than a dead queen should have looked, but older than any living grief. Her eyes, Cassian's eyes, turned first to Vaelor. The black wolf shadow inside Cassian's body went still. Then the queen looked at her son. Cassian did not step closer. Elara saw the war in him. A boy wanted to move. A king knew better. A wounded man was afraid the next truth would ask him to forgive too quickly. Queen Mareth seemed to understand. I did not save you cleanly, she said. The ash vault carried her voice up the stairs, into the court, through every silent, noble watching from above. I sealed Vaelor's true name because Marov brought me a choice dressed as law. Surrender the name, or watch the council declare my son unfit and execute his wolf before the moon court. Marov's staff trembled in his hands. Cassian's voice was quiet. You never told me. I was told you would live if you hated me. The words struck harder than a scream. Vaelor lowered his head inside Cassian's shadow. Silver light pulsed at his throat, where the scars had begun to loosen but not yet vanish. Cassian's hand curled once, empty, as if reaching for a childhood he could not recover. Elara looked up toward the stairwell. Sorel stood frozen, blood drying over the ruined place where the crescent seal had burned her chest. Her beauty had become something brittle. Behind her, the court was beginning to look not at Elara, but at Marov. That was why Sorel moved. She stepped beside the elder and seized the open staff before anyone understood. Marov snapped. Lady Frost. She drove the broken crescent seal into the hollow core of the staff. Queen Mareth's silver hair flared black. The furnace screamed. The queen's fire shape twisted, nearly collapsing. Cassian surged forward. Elara caught his wrist. He stopped, because she touched him. The entire vault felt it. Not command. Not claim. Trust under threat. Sorel saw it, and smiled through blood. You want confession? She called down. Then hear all of it. The blackened staff lifted in her hands, and the ash vault walls answered. Every old branding iron, every broken chain, every erased name around the chamber glowed with a dark memory. The blue fire dimmed. The ash beneath Elara's feet cooled into gray dust. Sorel was not fighting the truth now. She was drowning it in every fear that had fed the vault for generations. On the wall, memories opened. A king losing his mind after his wolf chose a woman from a rival bloodline. A border war beginning after a mate bond crossed pack law. A Luna poisoned because the council feared her child would inherit forbidden magic. A Draven prince found dead beneath a moon gate, his wolf name carved from his chest. Some memories were true. That was the cruelty. Sorel did not need to invent every horror. She only needed to arrange old wounds into a cage and call it wisdom. "Look at them," she said. "Every time wolves chose against law, blood followed. Every time the throne trusted instinct, packs burned. The frost line did what soft-hearted Dravens could not. We made sure the crown survived its own heart." Elara felt the court shifting again. Not fully, but enough. Fear did not need innocence. It needed examples. Cassian stared at the wall of memories. "You used tragedies to justify theft. We used history to prevent repetition. You burned true mates. We burned civil war before it learned to walk." Vaelor growled, but the sound was weaker now. The memories pressed against him too. The royal wolf had lived through some of that blood. He knew loss. He knew hunger. He knew what hearts could cost kingdoms. Elara felt the name fire in her chest flicker. Sorel had found the deepest battlefield. Not law, not proof, fear of freedom. Queen Mareth's voice came again, strained through the furnace. "Do not let them make survival sacred." Elara looked at the queen. Mareth's fire form was fraying, pulled apart by the black staff in Sorel's hands. "I left a last witness," the queen whispered. Sorel's smile vanished. Marov looked terrified. Cassian stepped closer to the furnace. "Where?" The queen's burning eyes turned to Elara. "Not where a king would search." The false mate brand rose from the floor. It had been quiet since the ash crown broke. Now it floated toward Elara and lowered its broken crescent near her heart, not touching, simply waiting. Elara understood with a cold rush. "The brand," she whispered. Queen Mareth nodded. "I remade one false mate iron before they sealed me in the staff. I gave it hunger for false law. I gave it memory enough to kneel, if truth ever stood before it." Elara looked at the old iron that had refused to burn her. The law had not failed by accident. A dead queen had hidden a witness inside its weapon. Cassian's face broke open, not fully, not softly, but enough for pain to become something larger than blame. "You left me a way back," he said. "I left you a chance," Mareth answered. "Not a command." The difference mattered. Elara felt it settle through the vault. Commands had built the ash vault. Choices would have to unmake it. Sorel lifted the staff higher, touching, but a dead queen's regret does not rule a living kingdom. She slammed the staff into the stair. Black ash raced across the walls. The memories became shadows with teeth. Old burned mates stepped out of the stone, not as spirits at peace, but as twisted shapes formed from how the council had recorded them. Devourers, witches, oathbreakers, false brides, ruin women. Their mouths opened, and every accusation ever used in the vault poured out at once. False, dangerous, devouring, unfit, forbidden. Elara staggered. Cassian caught her elbow, then let her find her footing. The restraint steadied her more than his grip. Vaelor moved to her other side. The false mate brand hovered before her like a shield too small against a storm. Sorel descended the stairs again, step by step, carrying the black staff. The shadows parted for her. They knew the frost line. They had worn its language too long. "If the vault will not burn you as devourer," Sorel said, "then let every woman it ever burned accuse you of becoming what they were." Elara looked at the twisted shadows. For a moment, fear nearly won. Not fear of death, fear of being joined to every cruel word the world had used to survive what it did. Then one shadow reached toward her. A woman with dark hair, Elara Draven, Cassian's father's first true mate. Her mouth opened. The word that came out was not accusation. Witness. The black record around her cracked. Another burned woman lifted her head. Witness. Then another. And another. The chamber began to change. Sorel's eyes widened. Elara stepped forward, tears burning hot on her face. "They were never accusing me." The false mate brand flared blue-white. "They were waiting for someone who could hear them beneath your names." The shadows turned toward Sorel. Not monstrous now. Remembering. Sorel gripped the staff with both hands, forcing the crescent seal deeper into Queen Mareth's hair. Then hear this. The staff split fully. A black flame erupted from it and shot into the 7 cracked moons above the vault. The moons repaired themselves. Not with silver, with black iron. The ash vault sealed its stairway shut. The court vanished behind closing stone. Cassian, Elara, Vaelor, Sorel, Marov, the queen's fading fire, and the remembered burned women were locked below together. Sorel's voice echoed in the dark. No court, no witnesses, no mercy. The wolf-shaped furnace opened its mouth one final time. Inside it, the last hidden law burned red. To break the ash vault, one true name must be spoken willingly into the fire. Cassian looked at Vaelor. Elara looked at Cassian. And Sorel smiled, because they all understood. If Vaelor's true name entered the furnace, the vault would open. But the royal wolf might never return. Cassian laid down his sword. The sound of it striking the ash vault floor was small, almost gentle, and somehow more terrifying than battle. A king without a blade stood beneath 7 black iron moons, facing a furnace that had eaten women, names, bonds, and truths for generations. Vaelor moved inside his shadow, restless and furious. Elara felt the wolf's choice before he made it. Not death, not surrender, offering. No, she said. Cassian turned to her. The furnace cast red light across his face, carving every wound sharper. The boy whose wolf had been sealed by his mother, the king shaped by council fear, the man who had only just learned what freedom cost. Elara? No. She stepped between him and the furnace before Vaelor could move. You do not get to call this devotion and vanish. Sorel laughed from the dark. Listen to her. The name, Firebride, wants the throne remade without price. Elara did not look at her. No, I want the price named correctly. The remembered women around the vault lifted their faces. Elara Draven stood nearest the furnace, her burned form no longer monstrous, but still scarred by the old record that had called her devourer. Behind her waited dozens more. Women erased as false mates, forbidden brides, ruin, witches, oathbreakers, all the names the vault had used to hide fear beneath law. Marov clutched the broken staff to his chest. Queen Merith's hair still burned inside it, but the queen's fire shape in the furnace had grown faint. Sorel's eyes narrowed. The law is clear. One true name must be spoken willingly into the fire. Elara looked at the furnace. Whose true name? The red flame paused. Sorelli's smile faltered. Cassian went still. The old hidden law burned again, above the furnace mouth. To break the ash vault, one true name must be spoken willingly into the fire. Elara breathed through the fear in her ribs. It does not say royal wolf name. Marov's head snapped up. Sorel's voice sharpened. Do not play with temple law. You have played with it for 7 generations. The false mate brand floated to Elara's side. Its broken crescent glowed blue-white now, no longer a weapon searching for skin, but a witness waiting for record. Elara turned to the remembered women. They took your names and replaced them with accusations. They made your bonds into warnings. They made your deaths into law. Kyla stepped closer. Elara's voice shook, but it did not break. If the vault wants one true name willingly spoken into the fire, then let it begin with the first woman it lied about. The ash vault trembled. Kyla's burned eyes filled with pale light. Sorel shouted, Silence her! Marov raised the broken staff, but Cassian moved at last. He did not strike to kill. He struck the staff from Marov's hands. It skidded across the ash, spilling black fire and strands of Queen Merith's silver hair. Vaelor surged from Cassian's shadow and pinned Marov to the wall with one massive paw. The elder screamed once. Not from pain, from being unable to command anything. Sorel lunged for the staff. Elara reached it first. The moment her fingers touched Queen Merith's burning hair, blue fire rushed through her blood. She saw the dead queen kneeling in the vault, weeping as she sealed Vaelor. She saw Kala standing before the furnace years earlier. She saw the first false mate brand forged not to judge liars, but to frighten true mates who stood too close to power. Then she saw herself chained in the Ember Moon Hall, waiting for a brand that refused to make her a lie. Elara lifted the silver hair toward the furnace. Queen Merith Draven, she said, your fear was used. Your silence was weaponized. Your son lived, but the council built a prison from the mercy you could not finish. The queen's fire shape bowed her head. Cassian's breath caught. Elara turned to Kayla. Speak if you choose. The word mattered. Choose. Not burn. Not confess. Not obey. Kayla stepped into the red glow. Her burned record cracked like old ice. Her voice came soft, but it filled the vault. My name was Elara Draven. I was not devourer. I was chosen. The furnace roared. Red flame turned blue. The first black iron moon cracked. Sorel stumbled backward. No. Another woman stepped forward. My name was Thessa of the Red Fen. I was not false. I was afraid. The second moon cracked. Another. My name was Elara Moonbent. I was not a curse. I carried warning. The third moon split. One by one, true names entered the fire. Not as sacrifices, as corrections. The ash vault had been built on stolen records, and now every record returned with a voice. The chamber shook violently. Stones fell from the sealed stairway. Above them, the court began pounding on the closed doors, their muffled shouts finally sounding less like judgment and more like fear of being left outside the truth. Sorel backed toward the furnace, face stripped of beauty, title, and certainty. Stop. If the vault breaks, every mate, law written from it, breaks with it. Cassian retrieved his sword, but kept it lowered. Good. Sorel turned to him. You would let forbidden bonds challenge royal order? I would let living wolves choose before dead fear names their choices treason. Vaelor's true name flared across the floor. The royal wolf looked at Elara. This time she understood. The vault had not demanded Vaelor's death. It had demanded a true name willingly given. And still, one final name waited not to be consumed, but to choose what record would remain after the prison broke. Cassian looked at Vaelor, then at Elara. No command passed between them. Only trust. Vaelor stepped to the furnace. Elara's heart seized. But the wolf did not enter the flame. He lowered his head and spoke his name into it. Vaelor. The final 4 moons shattered at once. The furnace burst open. Blue-white fire swept through the ash vault, not burning skin, not devouring bodies, but tearing false law from stone. The old branding irons melted into harmless black rivers. The throat chains split link by link. The mate judgment tablets cracked open and spilled ash records into the air, each false accusation burning away until only true names remained. Sorel screamed as the crescent seal ripped from her chest. It hovered before the furnace, twisting, trying to hold its shape. Then the false mate brand struck it. Iron against iron. Witness against seal. The crescent seal broke. Sorel fell to her knees. For one breath, she looked very young. Then, very empty. Without the seal, without the council's fear, without the stolen right to stand beside Cassian's silenced wolf, she was only a woman who had mistaken control for survival and called it duty long enough to believe herself noble. The vault doors exploded open above them. Courtlight poured down. Every noble, guard, healer, priest, and wolf-blooded witness saw the final ash record burning across the chamber floor. False mate. Lifrost. Namefire witness. Elara Veyne. Royal wolf name. Vaelor Draven. Restored by willing choice. Ash vault judgment. False law devoured. No one spoke. Then the wolves began to kneel. Not all at once. First the lower guards. Then the old temple wolves. Then the noble wolves who had howled for Elara's branding only hours before. One by one, every wolf shadow in the Ember Moon Hall lowered its head toward the woman they had called false. Elara stood among broken chains, soot on her dress, the silver witness mark still glowing faintly at her brow. She did not smile. Victory felt too heavy for that, too full of the dead, too full of all the women whose names had to burn before the living could breathe. Cassian stepped beside her, not in front, not claiming space over her. Beside. Sorel looked up at him from the ash. Kill me then. Cassian's face was cold. No. Her laugh came broken. Mercy? Record. He turned toward the court. Lady Sorel Frost will live to testify every claim, right forged through the crescent seal. High Elder Marov will name every rite performed in the ash vault, every woman burned as false, every line of law written from fear. Marov, still pinned beneath Vaelor's paw, whispered, "The council will not survive that." Cassian looked down at him, then it was never worthy of surviving. Elara felt the words move through the hall like a gate opening. Not peace. Not yet. But air. Queen Merith's fire shape, appeared one last time in the broken furnace. Cassian faced her, and for a moment he was neither boy nor king, only a son standing before a mother he could not fully forgive, and no longer had to hate completely. "I am sorry," she said. Cassian's voice was low. "So am I." The queen nodded. Then her fire turned to silver ash and rose through the open stairwell, carrying the last of the burned women's names into dawn. By morning, the Ember Moon Hall no longer smelled of iron judgment. The false mate brand was placed on the throne steps, not destroyed, because Elara asked that it remain as witness. Its broken crescent no longer glowed red. It burned blue only when a lie came near. The ash vault was open to the families of the women it had taken. Their names were carved into the royal floor where Vaelor's name had first returned. Not hidden under law, not sealed in ash. Seen. Sorel and Marov were chained not by throat, but by record. They would speak until every false right had been named. Cassian dissolved the provisional claim right before the court. He did not announce Elara as Luna. He did not bind her with a title while the smoke of one prison still clung to her skin. Instead, when the hall emptied and dawn spread across the black stone, he stood with her before the name Vaelor burned into the floor. "You are free," he said. Elara looked at him. "From the court?" "From me, if that is what you choose." The answer hurt because it was real. Vaelor stood behind him, whole now, scarred but unsealed. The great wolf lowered his head to Elara, not demanding, not pleading, waiting. Elara touched the witness mark at her brow. "And if I stay?" Cassian's eyes held hers. "Then you stay as Elara Veyne, not false mate, not prophecy bride, not my proof before the council." Her throat tightened. "What would I be to you?" For the first time, the dangerous Alpha King looked almost afraid of hope. "My equal in the fire," he said, "and the only name my wolf chose when law tried to make him silent." Elara looked down at the royal floor, where the false mate brand had once knelt at her feet. Then she placed her hand over the restored name. Vaelor burned warm beneath her palm. "Not a chain. A choice. I will stay," she said. "But I will not be crowned in ash." Cassian bowed his head. "Then we will remake the crown before it ever touches you." Behind them, Vaelor howled. The sound rose through the broken ash vault, through the Ember Moon Hall, through every corridor where false laws had once walked safely. Across the kingdom, wolves answered the restored name without knowing why. Elara Veyne had entered the court as a branded liar. She stood at dawn beside the Alpha King, as the woman false law could not burn. And when Cassian took her hand, not to claim, not to command, but to ask the blue witness fire between them, did not devour the throne. It began to remake it.